Welcome everybody to the podcast. I'm Dr. Olivia Tatara.
Dr. John Falcone Cardona, Yaakov Healing Art.
And we have today a very special guest. We have Dr. Dan Solloway, PhD, and he is here to speak about who he truly is. You've heard the introduction on his many accomplishments and also the work that he has done. Well, in life, progression is something that never stops. So we're here to talk with Dr. Dan with different topics about his projects, what currently inspires him, what his motivation is for the work that he does to help many people, and also just inspire people about how he creates his beautiful art as well. So Dr. Dan, we thank you so much for being here to share with us and our audience.
Well, it's an honor. I really appreciate you guys doing this and to talk to a new group of people. Now, by the way, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Well, I do a number of different things that I have over the years. I was in Puerto Rico back in around 1990, 89, 90, I'm 74 now, training people on my hydrogel exercise equipment, which I invented many, many years ago. And it's all done in the water, but it turns the water into a resistance field that can be as intense as anything you can do on land with weights. It's just a little added speed dramatically increases the resistance. So I worked with a lot of the pro teams. Dallas Cowboys were the first team, but the 49ers, the Miami Dolphins, all these different pro teams, and people like Mike Tyson, John McEnroe, there's a number of sport athletes and movie stars. I never met Tom Cruise, but him and Dustin Hoffman picked it up when they were making a Rain Man here in Oklahoma. And Dustin Hoffman used to buy tons of equipment from us. He had a huge family connection, and he would buy it for everybody. And then Tom Selleck, I gave him a set. He ended up selling a bunch for us, so all the women at this gym wanted to know what he was doing. I'm sure they were using it as an excuse to talk to him. But anyway, so that was back in the 80s and 90s. Before that, I started studying exercise and nutrition. About 14 years old, did exercise when I was 13, set some records for my town and stuff, and then started lifting weights and studying that, got deep into nutrition, started designing the weightlifting program back in, I guess it would be about 67, when I was a junior in high school, because the coaches didn't know anything about lifting weights. They thought if you lift the weights, you'd be muscle bound and you couldn't move. And so they didn't teach weightlifting, so the high school kids went to the coaches and wanted me to teach. And so I got into it at a very early age. We had a pipe and steel company and a fabrication company in my small hometown, about 8,000 people. So when I wanted something in the way of weights, I would go in and I'd design something. The welders would help me put it together. I started doing that at 14. And I was studying the Nautilus textbook when Nautilus machines first came out. I was fascinated by the concept, because we used to do something similar to that with weights. The concept of Nautilus was to make the resistance hard at every point in the path of movement. But I had made these little bitty handheld bells that, as I was taking martial arts and I was doing my karate routine in the water, and I wanted more resistance. And I got a good pump from it, but I didn't realize it did the same thing as Nautilus. And then when I read Nautilus, I thought, I'll make them larger. And so when I increased the size, in 6 weeks, I put, chest went from 42 and a half to 47, and arms went 15 and a quarter to 17 or 17 and a quarter in 6 weeks. So I was 29 years old, and I started begging my dad to let me patent it. And that's how I started my hydrogel stuff. Art, I was very fortunate in the area of art. There was a man that had a ranch about 40 miles from where I grew up, but a doctor told me if I'm serious about art, I need to meet this man because he knows everybody in the art world. He's a major mover and shaker in the art world. His name was Dord Fitz, D-O-R-D-F-I-T-Z. And I was in college studying psychology and philosophy and art, and I drove out, had dinner with him and his wife, started taking lessons from him, and he would give us these problems to solve. And each problem was designed to create different understandings in the area of art, whether we're talking about spatial depth, where the first problem was real deep. Next one, everything had to stay on the same plane. We're using right angle shapes, whether it's an L shape or a real fast moving shape or a simple rectangle. We're using shapes, and we're learning how shapes interact with each other. We're learning how colors and intensity shadings. In other words, grace up, down, how it pushes it into the background. And we're learning that, and how if it's a fast-moving shade with gray down, it still wants to move forward. He's teaching us things while he's teaching us landscape painting and summertime portrait and everything else. And so I'm learning all this, all of these problems. One problem was 21 shades of black to white on the quarter inch or 1/8 square, or 1/3 of an inch squares. And when you do it right, it glows like foam. But he said normally your eye only sees 7 shades of black to white. But once you work with these 21 shades from then on, it will see 21 shades. It'll be conscious of that. Another problem where we had to mix color till they had exactly the same value. When you get them all having the same value, they glow like fluorescent. And he said, normally the tone of something overwhelms the mind. And so you could see, if you're colorblind, you could still see in the black and white world, you could see the form of everything. He said, this way is the first time your eye ever sees pure color relating to other color. And again, working on that, he would sensitize our eyes to color. So he had all these different problems, and we were always getting different problems. My sculptures, he liked from the very beginning. He handled them in his gallery in Amarillo. It took me about 5 or 6 years to get where he handled me along with a New York artist. He had the first abstract impressionist show in the world in Amarillo at the time, back in the 40s or early 50s. He was teaching in a room upstairs in a lumberyard in Amarillo before he had his gallery. And so you got people like Jackson Pollock, William de Kooning, all these famous artists that paintings now sell for $80, $100 million, hanging in a lumberyard in Amarillo, and he's trying to get the people there in Amarillo to buy them. And Fortune Magazine did an article on it. If they didn't buy it, but they did. As he educated the people on art, they became great customers. And so these famous artists that I was studying in college was coming to Amarillo and doing workshops. And I thought, this is cool. Here they are in my textbook, and next week I'm going to go study with Louise Nicholson, the great sculptor. And the next week with Leon Polk Smith, or not next week, but maybe next semester. And so he was always bringing these people, but he was also, they were wanting to come because they became clients, customers to these artists. Elaine de Kooning came often, and she sold a lot of art through that area of the country. Because Dort had 14 art schools. So I started studying art, and then about 6 years into it, he started promoting me, along with the top New York artists. He would take my work with me through the 14 schools that were spread out through Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, and to sell the work. And then around that time, I invented my hydrotone equipment and worked it all out and got the patents going, and got the Dallas Cowboys involved in it, and Valley Health Clubs, and then found partners here in Oklahoma City. And we took it, it was around the country, and then around the world. Japan, I consider sort of the high mark of that part of my career or life, where I went over and certified 100 personal trainers over there to take it out through Japan. And so that was a 10-day trip. It was very, very enjoyable. They were very wonderful people. And I really enjoyed that one. And then writing poetry starting about a senior in high school. Never could write it in high school until the very end of my high school year. And then these poems started coming. And they were really spiritual messages, but they came in poetic form. And I always laugh about that, because the ego will want to take pride in something. But your higher self, the Holy Spirit, or whatever you want to call it, can use that to teach you. So while I'm going around reciting my poems, and anyone that wants to hear them, I'm hearing the message myself over and over again. I realize, oh, that's interesting. I'm having to hear this, where if someone else wrote it, I would read it once and go, I like that. But I may never think about it again. So sometimes our things that we're thinking we're doing for one reason is being done for another. Speaking of that, I know that John Olivier is deep into spiritual reality. And it's been a big pursuit of mine. I started, started probably when I was 17 or 16, doing, really getting deep into hypnosis. I read a medical textbook on hypnosis and auto-hypnosis when I was in the 7th grade. And I was very, very fascinated by it. But I thought it was going to give me superhuman strength and all that kind of stuff. But I was very fascinated by it as a little kid. And then when I injured my back, I was into Olympic weightlifting, how much weight you could put over your head. And I injured my back at the end of my, towards the last game of the football of my junior year. And so I was in a lot of pain. I had some herniated discs. So I got really good at going deep and relaxing things, and then going off into other realms of reality. I think when I was a sophomore in college, I took Jose Silver's mind control course. From that, it took me into, I used what I learned there and ended up going into some spiritual realms that I don't know if I should be talking about or not. If people don't have a basis for that, it sounds a little crazy, but they do have a basis for that. I'd be glad to talk about it. In fact, I'm writing a book on it right now.
Yes.
My mystical journey.
Yes, we would love to hear about it.
Well, one of Jose Silver's techniques is if you're tuning in on someone and you can't really quite focus on what's going on mentally with him, he would have you imagine you're putting their head on and you're inside, you're seeing through their eyes, you're hearing through their ears, you're feeling how they're feeling. And in fact, I remember there was a man in the Korean War that had taken Silva, I think it's the Korean War, and something exploded close to him. And from then on, he was deaf in that ear. And so when he was taking Silva, he put on someone's head, and he snapped his fingers on the right and on the left. And he said, okay, well, the guy's hearing's good on both sides. And they were, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to be able to hear on this side. And I just heard that. And he realized that it's a psychological deafness that he had going on. And so from then on, he wasn't deaf. And so what I was doing, I'm Jewish, but I was born a little Oklahoma town of 8,000, only our family and our cousins, and this one veterinarian going Jews around, our relatives. So I'm sort of a mixture of all the different religions and open to all of it. I studied Hinduism and Buddhism, but when I was a junior in college, my roommate's date had blood poisoning and went into a coma. Oh, wow. And I started giving her mouth-to-mouth while we tried to get her to the hospital. We did. And the doctor, emergency room doctor, she had taken all this medicine. My roommate and her were drinking whiskey straight. They couldn't even find a Coke machine that was open on Sunday night. And so, unfortunately, I don't drink, but they did. And so we got her to the hospital. And I went up to the prayer room in the hospital because the doctor said, I don't think she'll come out of the coma. I said, okay, Jesus, work with me. Tell me what to do here. I said, my ego's going to want to take credit for this, but that doesn't matter. What matters is helping this person. And he said, and so my inner guidance was, put this stuff in her blood. Imagine seeing this stuff in her blood, and now her blood's glowing. And she's, and when I came back down, she was out of the coma. The doctor said she's going to be okay. And so I thought about it the next day, because when we were driving home from Shawnee, Oklahoma, the sun's starting to rise. We've been up all night. And the next few days, I thought about what happened there. And, was I really involved in that, helping that girl come back, and all that. And I said, okay, Jesus, tell me how to meditate. He said, what I was told to do is take a color like red, a soft rosy red for joy, and think of a positive word and move it as I breathe. Let's say my feet would, I imagine them expanding and then going back, but I imagine a red aura like light, Then I go to the calves, then I go up the thighs. I slowly go up through the body till I get up to the face and working around all the muscles in the face and spend a lot of time working around the eyes. Then I would take another color, like a soft blue for peace, and do that and go through the body. and health would be a green, and abundance might be another thing, or love would be white, and I'd work through the body. It'd take about 15 minutes to do each color and work through the muscles, maybe 20. I got where I was skipping one of my classes because I was going so deep, I didn't want to come out of it. And I would come out of it and I'd go, I knew I went somewhere, but I wouldn't always remember where. But I was so joyful. I was like someone on drugs that never did drugs. And one time I woke up in this, or I didn't wake up, I was sort of leaning in this, up against a tree, and I didn't astral project in the way that you feel yourself leaving your body. I don't remember doing that. I just remember all of a sudden I'm in this forest, and it's a round opening. There's flowers all the way around. And my back's up against this tree, and my legs are on the ground. And Jesus is right in front of me, and there's a man to his right, and there's a man to his left. And they're teaching me things. And I came out of that. I was in the student union up in this study room they had. I felt literally like I was walking 6 inches off the ground. And there were bright white auras around everything on campus. And I was just elated. And I spent a lot of time doing that. And this is my junior year. So I'm up for the Vietnam draft. My draft number was 13. And I'm so blissful. I'm sitting there thinking, oh, well, if I get drafted, I'll go to Canada. And I'll just live by myself like Thoreau. And I'll live by the cabin, and I can go talk to the trees. I was so blissed out. And a voice in my head said, Dan, if all you wanted to do is be blissful, you didn't need to come into this world. You were that way before you came. You had a job you wanted to do. I could bliss out after that. I could meditate and get calm, but I couldn't just use it like a drug. So I continued to meditate for years, and I had studied with Audley Allison here in Oklahoma City when they had that for a while. Studied Kundalini yoga, Kriya yoga, and you're running the energy through the chakras and through the body. And we did that, but I did realize down the line that I had gotten more out of just asking my inner guidance, how do I meditate and what do I do today? Because it wouldn't always be the same from one day to another. So formulas, I think people can get stuck with formulas. They have to be fluid and open to it. So anyway, though, Baba Mutananda, who's the, trying to remember who the premier of India was at the time, he was her guru. And he came through Oklahoma City. We had 200 people come. This is the hippie generation. And so we're very open to Eastern things. And so we have a workshop or a meeting with him out in a beautiful area. I'm not sure exactly where it was at, but somewhere outside of Oklahoma City. And we could speak for the 2 days or 3 day workshop, except during the question and answer period. And I remember he liked to cook, and I remember the food was so delicious you didn't want it to leave your mouth. But I also remember that, well, he would come around, and we did like 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning, we're meditating. And he would take his thumb and put it on your third eye, right there between your eyebrows. And it hit you with peacock feathers. I think he had some ash on his thumb when he marked you there. Well, the first time he did it, to me, I'm sitting there, and I felt like I got knocked down into a black hole. Wasn't expecting anything, and all of a sudden, boom. And then towards the very last day, I felt like Kundalini rise, and we had other people throughout the workshop. Every so often you'd hear someone start breathing real heavy, and their body's shaking around. And his interpreter, who was a professor from India, said if you saw this in any other environment, you would think maybe you're in a psych ward. People were sort of being a little bit spastic as the Kundalini energy is coming up their spine, and they're making heavy breathing sounds and stuff. I was sitting in sort of a half lotus position, and my spine started shaking. As the energy moved up the spine, my hands started moving on my knees real fast, and I just felt like I was sitting inside watching it. And it was a pretty amazing experience. But I'm going to tell you my most amazing experience. In about 1995 or 96, My parents had already died in 92 and 93. So I don't know why I would have waited this long, but I think it must have been, I know who I was dating at the time, and I know when that was, so it had to be around 95, I'd say. I studied a lot on near-death experiences, and, you know, people go down the tunnel, they see the light, their life is reflected back on them, and they see it holographically as through the eyes of the people they interacted with as well as through their own eyes. So they experience it as a hologram. And so I was worried about my mom. My mom was, somebody told me your mom was one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen and all that. And I never knew how to take that. But she was very intelligent, but she was cynical. She was pretty angry in society, of course, being a Jew, being young enough to see what happened during World War II with Hitler and everything. And a lot of different things that just made her angry. So I figured when Mom went through the light review, she would be hard on herself. She would see where she made a mistake. Because she was sort of hard on people around her, that usually means you're hard on yourself as well. And so I was telling my mom, this is based on the Course in Miracles, which I had studied since 1979, I believe, maybe 1980. And I was telling her, I said, Mom, you're not your ego. You're not your body. You're not your mistakes. You're not the good things you did, nor the bad things. What you are is more wondrous than anything you could ever hope to be. You're a child of God. And anything you think you've done wrong, or anything you think has been done wrong to you, forgive that person and forgive yourself. Because at any time, that person can choose to be one with God. They're blocking it, but they can choose it. And same thing is true for you. And so you can't take that away from someone, and they can't take it away from you. And that's the only thing that is important. And so everything else is forgivable. There's nothing to forgive, because you can't change that choice. And I was trying to communicate that to her, and I had an image of my mom. And all of a sudden, she had disappeared, and she was a star in an ocean of light. And there were all these other people I know, and relatives and everything, and friends and stuff that passed off. And that you didn't see their bodies. When I had other experiences, I would see the image of them. You didn't see their body. You just saw more concentration of this light field. The light field was God. And what we are is that essence concentrated and has a unique will within the larger will. But yet it's one with it. And one of my poems was dealing with, well, it's really more of a parable. And I see it in this. It's where these waves are on the ocean. I was about 17 or 18 when I had this on the ocean. And one wave is racing up and talking about how it's taller than other waves. The other, well, I'm broader. Well, my foam is white. And they're competing with each other. This other wave goes down and looks up into the other waves. And comes back up and tries to tell them they're all one. Well, the other waves didn't like that. They pounded down on it. So the other wave just dropped down and spread out to the ocean. Another analogy that came at that time, well, two analogies came. One, I didn't know that Kabir had written a poem, exactly the same thing. But the one of the was two fish on the bottom of the ocean. And one fish was trying to explain to the other one what water was. The other one couldn't understand it. It was too much a part of it. And the third one was this raindrop dropping towards the ocean, and it's frightened. It feels it's going to die when it hits the ocean. But when it hits the ocean, it becomes the ocean, and it expands. Well, when I'm seeing all that light, all those concentrations of entities on the other side, there's no place where they end and it begins. Our bodies tell us we end here and the world's out, separate from our body. And we use that sense it can be used positively, but it can also be a way to feel isolated, separate, and because we're defending against that awareness of we're one with God. You don't feel special, but you feel more love and joy than you can ever imagine. It was the most wondrous feeling. When I was seeing all that, there were these waves of love and joy washing over me. And it was so intense, I could only take it for about 20 minutes. Tears were coming down my eyes, and I just feeling this immense love and joy. And about 2 weeks later, I thought, I wonder if I could experience that again. And I sat down, I just thought of my mom, and there it was. And again, for about 20 minutes. So then I started doing it a couple times a day. And this went on for a few months. And I felt like the whole universe had wrapped me in a comforter like a little baby and held me. It was the most secure, loving, joyful feeling you can imagine, and most fulfilling. Because I would have described myself, I probably would have argued about it, tried to rationalize it. But looking back on it, I was somewhat of a womanizer. I was always looking for that one woman to fulfill me. And not easy for me to say, this is her. What I was really trying to do is fill in some holes in myself And that experience filled those in, and I realized, oh, that's what I was doing. I needed to feel that deep, deep, profound love and the sense of completion. And then the other things just fell apart. Now, before I studied the Course in Miracles, I studied Krishnamurti. And that's a good one to study before the Course. Krishnamurti, he didn't believe in gurus. He was a guru, but didn't believe in. Alan Watts said Krishnamurti is surrounded by non-followers everywhere he goes. I always got a kick out of that. And he said that he believed that the guru was trapped by the followers as much as the followers were trapped by the guru, that it was a personal, individual experience that a person had to concentrate, that you didn't get it from a guru. Though there are things you can get, he didn't believe that. So what he taught was very similar to what Buddha was teaching, is that you look at the stream of consciousness, you look at the words and the space between the words, and you don't try to latch on to any of the words. You just let it flow. And when you find your mind trying to latch onto it, you step back and say, okay, I'm watching myself trying to latch onto it. So you're always trying to keep the distance between you and the stream of consciousness, but you do it in an effortless way if you're doing it right. The tendency will be to look at the thoughts. Oh, I don't like those thoughts. Oh, I like this. Well, that's thoughts, judging thoughts. So one time I'm sitting in the Dairy Queen in Woodward, Oklahoma. After I'm reading a little bit on Krishnamurti, I'm watching my thoughts. I've been reading and studying and doing that for, I guess, a few months. And I'm hearing an argument out in front of him. I'm watching this argument. I'm realizing that it felt like the left side over here was explaining to the right side. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's my mind. Why does one side have to explain to the other side if they're the same mind? And why is there a dialogue at all? And then all of a sudden I heard a question in my head, said, who's asking the question? I went, okay. That's when I realized I was separate from it, really separate from it. And then it said, who's listening? That's when I realized I was what they call the Atma. In Hindu religion, that's called the observing consciousness. But by watching that, you realize you're really not that. That's the conditioned, chattering mind out front. It's a field of the mind field out there. But you're something more than that. And that's your pure essence. But that was a wonderful experience, an important one for me, but not as important as that light experience. That, because people that astral project and go to different planes, they nearly always, those planes always deal with maybe beautiful scenery, but they're always bodies. Like the one where I was in the garden with the three men there teaching me things. Jesus and probably Elijah and Moses, I guess. But they're teaching me things. And, but they're not always, but the Course in Miracles teaches that the highest level is without bodies. Well, that's good to hear, but it was even far more important, I'm trying to understand that, but it's far more important when I actually experience it and understand what it means. Yeah. And that's what I consider the highest level. There may be levels higher than that, but I can't imagine what it'd be because it's just so joyful and wonderful, and so loving. I don't know what comes beyond that, but maybe there is something.
Yes.
So that's my mystical journey. You just got it in a verbal way. I didn't know if I was going to put that out like that or not. I had no idea. But anyway, I appreciate the platform to talk about that.
Yes, and
It's amazing.
Dr. Dan, we have one question because what I have noticed within the past 12 years, a lot of people have been diagnosed with bipolar, and it seems like there's other ways for treatments. And could you explain why, they keep up with their doctor, but why they need to experience something natural and change the way they're eating and exercise?
And you also mentioned how when the energy raises in that different way with the guidance, and also from here on this planet and others, that different things mentally, emotionally take place and people don't have to go towards the different toxins. And can you explain also what you do to aid, and also more on that topic?
Well, for one thing, what I did say would be a therapy where you learn that you're not the thoughts. When I realized I wasn't the stream of thought, I thought some people that psychopaths or sociopaths or something that act out on what we consider evil ways of interacting with people, they think they are those thoughts, and they have no choice but to be those thoughts. But you do have a choice. we're like someone in front of a computer that has gotten so deep into what's the program that's going on in front of them, they forget they're sitting outside of that. And to learn to sit outside of that gives them a freedom and space. So that one thing. There's things like emotional freedom technique, faster EFT, where you tap out. They found this by accident. I think Callahan, many years ago, a psychiatrist or psychologist there in California, had San Diego, I believe it was, had a lady that was deathly afraid of water. Didn't have a childhood memory of almost drowning, but for whatever reason, she is deathly afraid of water. And he had worked with her for quite a while and wasn't getting any results. So he told her, he said, let's meet at my house, and I'm going to back you in backwards to the swim pool, and you don't have to look at the water, because she couldn't drive by the ocean. She couldn't take a bath. She had to take a quick shower. And wow. Water just made her nauseous and frightened the heck out of her for whatever reason, bodies of water. And so he backed her in, put her on a lawn chair in there, and taking her through some hypnosis and trying to relax her. And when he felt like she's pretty deep, he says, now, you're calm now, you're going to stay calm, you're going to just glance over at that water and see how beautiful and peaceful it is. She glanced over and she jerked her head back around. I said, okay, let's try it again. Did that about 3 times. And she said, I got to leave. I'm going to throw up. And it's really hit my stomach hard. And so, wait a minute. I've taken a class in acupuncture and acupressure. Let me tap on the meridian right under your eye and calm your stomach. He did that. And she said, I'm not scared of water anymore. And she jumped up and ran over and splashed her face. Well, I got to get a drink of water here.
No problem.
Wow.
And so they started realizing, I'm going to sneeze now. Excuse me, folks.
No problem.
I took a fiber drink right before I talked to you guys. Probably not the best idea. But anyway, they realized that the body holds on to emotional traumas or fears or anxiety somewhere in the body. And if you tap on this, now Callahan had a real elaborate tapping process, but you tap on it and hit those and then release endorphins. Why? You're trying to make whatever the trauma was, like this woman that had been raped by her granddad. I saw my friend Robert Smith get rid of that in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes after years of suffering and being suicidal. He got rid of that by having her focus on it, make it more as dramatic as she could make it, as painful as she could make it, and then hitting the reflexology points and saying, you let it go, you feel it, now let it go, feel it, let it go, let go of that trauma, let it go, and you go through it. And he wanted to feel it. One of the reasons Robert was so good at it is like a bulldog, going after what the real trauma under the surface was. And the person usually is resisting that. They don't want to experience that. But if they let them experience it and he taps on it, it breaks the feedback loop between where the body is holding on to it and keeping the brain, the unconscious mind, bubbling under the surface, that trauma. And so when they break that, it's just gone. And that woman said that last place her granddad had molested her, she was 11 years old. And she was about 60, 80 pounds overweight. And he had told her when she was 11 or 12 that she's trying to push him away. Her little brother's in the room. She's trying to push him away. He said, well, I don't want you anywhere. You're too fat. So then she held on to weight as a defense. So she was married and had 2 or 3 children and all that. She used it as a defense. So there was that happened on a dining room table that, and her family never knew why they couldn't eat on this beautiful dining room table. So the tester cell, that was like Saturday, we're going to come back Sunday, the tester cell, she went and had fixed a meal on the dining room table and see if it did bother her. I've seen Robert work with people that you think that's purely physiological. They have diabetes, and he gets them to write down all their stress. I'll tell you a funny one. This for any couple that's married out there. Robert used to do a lot of married couples. And so this women show, this woman, this man and wife, the husband's supposed to show up first. Then there's supposed to be a 30-minute break between them. And then the wife's going to come. So when the wife shows up, I said, well, how did my husband do? So he never showed up. But that son of a bitch, he said, I knew he was going to do it. He doesn't care about her man. She just messing up the storm. Robert said, wait a minute. Let's work on you. I want you to list all the things he does that bothers you. And so she'd say, well, he looked at me this way, and that really bothered me. His tone of voice changes, and I know he's being sarcastic. And so they listed all those different points. And then Robert tapped on all those, had her feel it, get that feeling of upset or anger or hurt or whatever it was, and tap it out. And then she came back 2 weeks later and said, well, how's the marriage going? I said, going good. So what happened? I said, well, he would do those things, but it didn't bother me. And when it didn't bother me, he quit doing them. By breaking the feedback loop, it changed their whole marriage. You change one person, you change them both.
Yes.
Wow, yes.
And, but anyway, I see to take people that are insulin-dependent diabetic and find out what their stress points are, what are the things that upset them, and tap on those, and they release it. And they're no longer reaching for the insulin. The blood sugar is not bouncing around. And I was totally amazed by that, being someone that studies physiology and everything. And by the way, did you want me to speak about MOREMITO?
Yes.
Yes, if you can give a little bit about that, that would be great.
Well, I really haven't talked about my radio. I'll give you a little background. Starting in about 1995, maybe 94, I think the first one, I'm trying to remember the order of these, but there were 3 different companies. There was one called Vision for Life. Then there was a private label, Hydroxygen Plus, was a private label of Cell Food, which you get in most good health food stores. Fantastic product. And then there was another one that sold coral calcium. And I ended up doing the educational tapes for them, and I fell into it. I was already, at that time, I was doing physical therapy. I'd sold my exercise company, and I was using it to do physical therapy. And I went to this network marketing meeting, and the father of this, the man that owned Vision for Life, said, I don't know what this product is, but you take it at night and you lose inches off your waist, you gain muscle, you look younger, I don't know how it works. And I told the people next to me, I said, well, it's the secretocon. It's causing the pituitary gland to release growth hormone when you're sleeping. And they said, hey, will you do our tapes for us? So I started doing it. Well, that same man owned a Christian music company. We had a nice big recording studio. And so they'd have me, all the products that they ended up carrying, I would go in and they'd have me explain how it works, what the science is behind it. And they had some good products, some aloe vera and different things. And so I ended up doing that, and then ended up doing a lot of lectures on cell food, Hydroxygen Plus, but to those people, ran up a bill to the cell food company to do science and didn't pay their bill, and they tried to make their own, and they ended up hurting people instead of helping people. And so cell food though, it had been around since I think 68, similar to the military to purify water. Then they found it purified your body. And so it's a fantastic product, and coral calcium is a very good product done right. So I did those tapes, and this doctor that had a radio show heard me explain cell food, and he was there at the lecture, and he said, you need to be on radio. I went, never thought about it. I lectured around the world on exercise. I never thought about doing radio. He said, he thought I was going to follow him and talk about exercise. But radio is not a visual medium, so you can do a little bit, but there's a lot you can't do without being able to demonstrate. So I had extensive background in nutrition, but I wasn't a PhD yet. And so I would start talking about supplements, and had a show that in Oklahoma City for the people. It was like WKY, and then it was KTOK, and then KOC, and then back to KTOK, and those are the big AM stations here. And I did that from 97 to about 2021, somewhere I'd say about right then, 2021. And so then flipped over to podcasts, which I do now, called Dan's Health Talks. Well, the MOREMITO company used to be called Fox Legacy, and they had, at that time they had their products in capsules. But there were some things they could do with oil that they couldn't do with capsules, like black seed oil and olive oil. So they came up with another one. They changed names to MOREMITO for more mitochondria. And even when they had the dry powdered ones, I was seeing miracles. For myself, I didn't have any major element or anything going on where other people, oh, I don't need my glasses anymore. I've worn them since I was 8 years old. Or in the case with Noel, cerebral palsy, and walked with crutches all his life since he's a baby. Now, after going through the early versions of that, starting to greatly improve, and then with the new version, Restore 3.0, he walks without his crutches and can run a little bit, demonstrated for his church. The same thing happens with this little girl, she's 17 years old, but she had to be carried to the bathroom. She had to be bathed and dressed by her mother because she couldn't use her body. She spoke very well. It was very sweet tone to her voice. But she got where she belonged, and she's gone on to college. And I'm going, wow, this is really amazing. That she will talk about wanting to learn to drive. Then they had other people, this soldier that, I forget her name right off the top of my head, but she was one of the first people in the Iraqi war. I don't know if it's in Afghanistan or Iraq. Her truck got blown up, and it opened up the side of the skull. And for over 15 years, I think it was longer than that, she had no short-term memory whatsoever. Said every little thing she had to write down. I'm going to go in the other room and pick up such and such. I'm supposed to ask my husband this. It said it's just constantly writing notes to remind herself what she had to do. And 10 days after taking the Restore, her memory came back. They had other people that had aches and pains for many years, and blood sugar problems that were through the roof that leveled out. Just one thing after another, and I go, I've seen some wonderful things after interviewing all these experts and all these companies. They're really wonderful things. I've never seen a company affect so many different things so well. Calms people down with PTSD, just increases their energy. It helps some people lose weight because mitochondria is so important for blood sugar control, but also for ability to lose weight. That's where your metabolism is. So many different things. The list is very long, and on their website, there you can hear some of these testimonials. The ones I'm talking about, I think, are all there. So normally you're not supposed to be talking about someone else's testimony. They have to talk about it, but they're all there on the website, on MOREMITO website. And I started helping them explain some things and fill in on the regular show. And then about a year ago, they asked me to do a question and answer so people could get more in depth. So they offered that to the company. I think they charge $20 a month, $5 a week. So in Oklahoma, it's Central Standard Time, from 12:30, and now it seems to go to about 1:30. So for about an hour, if it's about high blood pressure, I do a talk on that. If it's about diabetes, I do a talk on that. If it's about memory on that, or eyes, or whatever the problem or the theme of the week is. We do that, and then after 15 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes, I open it up. People ask me a question and answer on any subject. But the reason I focus on this company, I think all the time I've been looking for one product that affects so many different things: mood, health, breathing. In fact, I loaded up on it when I thought I had the grow environment, so I really loaded up on it. Loaded up on everything I had in the house. And I've been almost chosen to death about 10:30 or 11, or maybe 12. And by 3 o'clock, I was fine. Nothing never showed up again. But we use it on so many different things. Neuropathy, they have a gel that is fantastic on pain. For myself, I do push-ups, but my upper arms are much stronger than my wrist in proportion. And if I don't get my wrist just right, I use these push-up bars. They're actually my hydrotone equipment that's meant for water are actually perfect for push-up bars too. If I don't get it just right, it wrenches my wrist if I'm too far, if I'm not straight above it. So I got where I couldn't open up the front door with my right hand. So I put the Rejuvenate gel around it, and I did that about 3 times that day. One time the next day, it never bothered me again. Then the left wrist, a couple months later, I did that to it. Did the same thing, never bothered me again. You don't feel anything, it's not hot. You don't feel like you're doing anything, but it's going deep into the body. Yes. And we have people using it. Well, I don't want to make any real deep health claims right now, but they're using it for all kinds of things.
Yes.
On knees. Well, we have people using it to help them deal with cancer and a number of other health problems, heart problems, and high blood pressure and all that. So it feeds the mitochondria what the mitochondria needs. As you age, you lose mitochondria. As the mitochondria dies, it becomes toxic in the cell, and it triggers a pathway called mTOR pathway. And the mTOR pathway triggers cancer that is very inflammatory. It triggers a lot of things. So when the mitochondria is healthy, then it works with the nucleus and keeps that cell healthy and able to regenerate, keeps the energy high. I mean, basically, as you get older, it's like turning a dimmer switch down slowly. Well, that's really turning down the mitochondria energy. You either have less activity in the mitochondria and you have less of them. In a muscle cell, you have about 1,000. In a heart muscle cell, I think there's 5,000, maybe more.
Yes.
And the eye, the back of the eye, the retina, has more mitochondria than its cell. The brain is second. And so where all this activity is, demands a whole lot of mitochondria. Every cell except red blood cells has mitochondria. And depending on the amount of activity the cell requires, amount of energy, the more mitochondria. But and that's why I always say the fountain of youth is in the mitochondria. But as you go down, as you lose that energy, so does your whole life start going down. And other things can't regulate. Stem cells, cellular communication, all that starts breaking down. But if you reverse it, you feed it what it needs, and the cell becomes healthy again. It takes care of itself. I mean, we're just composed of specialized cells, whether it's a liver cell, heart cell, eye cell. They distinguish for that organ, but they're cells, and there's certain things that each cell has that this product feeds, but it does more than that. We can say it's mitochondria. It also helps with the membrane of the cell, bringing down the inflammation. It helps the cells detoxify what they call mitophagy, which is detoxification of the mitochondria, or autophagy, which is detoxification of the overall cell. And I know that Harvey Gray, his group, the longevity group, say they think that's the most important thing for longevity is the ability for the cell to detoxify. Well, that comes down to mitochondria and mitochondria energy. So that's a very big part of the stem cell communication. We don't have a scientific study on it, but I know when you have 2 people with cerebral palsy, and all of a sudden they're getting the nerve action they couldn't get before. And when they're young, they have plenty of mitochondria. So something's going on there when it wasn't communicating to heal that area, or there's so much inflammation in that area, the healing couldn't take place. And so it also has anti-inflammatory qualities. Excuse me, another drink of water here. So anyway, I've gone on a long time here. You got anything else you want to say before I have to go?
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment on the entirety of this conversation consciously that you shared. It's amazing how at the beginning, of course, you were connected to that divine from birth, but the progression from the fitness, aiding people, developing your own spiritual path to get to the main point of how do you live your life to the fullest And yes, it does have to do with the cellular energy and how that's dispersed because that functions everything. So it's just amazing how it all comes together and then you grow throughout the wisdom of the life. So before we ask you about how people can